So welcome to UGS 303 Creative Problem Solving. We're going to be having these talks pretty much every class period. There will be a talk or two that you'll need to be listening to before we have our check-in during the regular class period. And in this talk, I'm just going to discuss a little bit what is this course about, and why would you want to take this course? Why would I want to teach this course? So, kind of fundamentals in this first talk. Maybe the easiest way to think about what the class is about is just to read the title, Creative Problem Solving. But let me make clear that by creativity, maybe we don't mean what people often mean by creativity. So sometimes people say, oh, you know, my dad is super creative. He goes out to the wood shop and he builds furniture and he's super creative. Or my brother, I mean, he loves to cook. And he's super creative because he comes up with all these amazing dishes. And those are kind of, I don't know, making artistic endeavors that some people would say that's creative. You know, maybe that's creative, maybe it's not creative in my book. Following a complicated recipe and producing a wonderful meal could be just monkey see, monkey do. It might not be creative at all. Actually. But I want us to think a little more seriously about creativity, that it's not just about these artistic or kind of amorphous activities, but it is very much about every part of your life. It's about science, it's about engineering, it's about business. All of these things require creativity and creative problem solving. So that's one thing the class is about. The other thing is that in terms of problem solving, what we're talking about here is not like a physics problem set where you're meant to plug in all the formulas and get the right answer and be done with it. I would call that a determinant problem. That's like 2x equals 10. There's one answer there, x equals 5, and that's a determinant problem. That's really not the kind of problem we're talking about this semester. We're talking about indeterminate problems. So that's sort of like 2x plus 3y plus z equals 45. You know, there are many different solutions of x, y, and z that will give you the answer to that problem. And those are the kind of problems we're going to be talking about. Not ones that have a simple singular solution, but ones that are very complex and have multiple solutions and are indeterminate. So that's very much what the course is about in terms of creative problem solving. Now, I would say there are 4 things we're going to be doing in this class. The first is we're going to be exploring the phenomena of creative problem solving. How is that way of thinking different from, let's say, more linear thinking or more direct thinking that you would do in solving a determinate problem? And the chances are very good that most of your education has been focused on linear problem solving. But what is it that's different about solving problems that require creativity, that require you to think outside the box, that require you to come up with solutions that somebody else might not come up with? So the first thing is we're going to just be exploring this phenomena of creative problem solving. Then the second thing is we're going to be looking at people who are creative. How did they get that way? What do they do that makes them creative? What are the traits that follow a creative person? So we're going to be looking at a lot of case studies. And sometimes it's case studies of societies that are creative and other societies that maybe are not so creative. Sometimes it's individuals that are creative as opposed to other people who are not so creative. So what is it in societies or in people that incline them to be more creative? And then the third thing we're going to be looking at is, how can I be more creative? How can I maybe incorporate some of those techniques acquire some of those traits of creative people, understand how to think more creatively myself. And that's going to be an important part of the course. And then the fourth and final thing, and maybe this is not for everyone, but I'm going to be trying to get you to open your mind and think about creativity almost as a way of life. And it really can be a lifestyle, that you're always thinking fresh, thinking new, thinking innovation, inventing, being curious, doing things that are not predictable or conventional. And is it possible you would like to adopt a piece of that kind of lifestyle, or even jump in wholeheartedly and adopt a kind of lifestyle that is about stimulation and provocation and thinking and designing and creativity and all of the things that go with that? So those are the four things we're going to be looking at. What is the phenomenon of creative problem solving? How have other people done this? What are traits I could acquire? And what would it mean to have a kind of lifestyle of creativity? So let's think for a minute about why you might be interested in taking a course like this. And maybe we could start with, why am I interested in teaching a course like this? And I would say there are three really fundamental reasons why I love teaching a course like this. The first is, I actually was one on the original committee that invented the UGS classes. And some of you may hate the idea of a UGS class. If so, okay, blame me. But this was a curriculum reform task force that the university had, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. It was chaired by Bill Powers, who eventually became the president of the university and implemented that curriculum reform. But one of the things we decided to do in that curriculum reform was to teach a signature course, a course that would be unique to the University of Texas and require every undergraduate to take that signature course. And I was even on the subcommittee that kind of defined what a signature course was. And it was meant to have 4 elements, and these 4 elements are all things I really believe in. The first is the course was meant to be interdisciplinary. That means that you are not supposed to be nerding it up in some narrowly defined disciplinary field. Now, I'm an architect. I know how to narrowly define my own field. But in an interdisciplinary class, I'm meant to be looking at issues from a much broader point of view. And I think in the current world, all the interesting innovation is happening in interdisciplinary fields, fields that are in between disciplines. So we thought from the very beginning, from the get-go, UT students ought to be introduced to interdisciplinary thinking. So that was one characteristic of a signature course. The second thing is it was meant to be immediately relevant, so that you're not meant to talk about some esoteric, maybe interesting, but esoteric subject matter that, I don't know, has no particular applicability to the 21st century. So these classes were meant to be something you could just walk out the door and you could apply that. And I think that's very much true of this class. So interdisciplinary, immediately relevant. A third thing, it was meant to be taught by an award-winning teacher. So I check box on that one. And then the fourth thing is it was meant to expose people to the gems, like GEMs, the assets of this university that make it kind of unique, that make it a very special place to go to and get your university education. So I love those things. I believe in those things. I wanted to teach a signature course, and then I was trying to figure out, well, what kind of signature course should I be doing? And I think this topic is incredibly interesting to me because I, as an architect, am a creative problem solver. That's my stock in trade. If I'm not creative, I don't have any usefulness as an architect. So, because I'm a designer, I'm meant to be a problem solver that way and in a creative way. So I felt like this is something I know something about. And also, I think this is a kind of education we need to do more in universities. We need to talk not just about facts and knowledge and those kinds of things. I think those are critically important. But I can remember in my own undergraduate education, I took 2 classes from this genius real estate guy in the business school named Rosenblum. And damn, they were so good. They were all about how to do affordable housing, which I was really interested in. And then maybe about 3 years later, I'm out in the work world and I'm looking to apply some of this. We got a project, an affordable housing project we were working on. And I realized that in 3 short years, pretty much everything I learned in that class was out of date. Things had changed really quickly, and it wasn't really very relevant. We went from a Democratic administration nationally to a Republican one, and all the financing mechanisms, everything just changed. So knowledge, specific software, things like that, those are good to know, and they are important for getting that kind of entry-level position, maybe. But in the long run, for your benefit of your larger education, I think we need to be talking about things like how do you think in a creative way, really critical thinking kinds of skills. So that's a second reason why I was interested in teaching the class. And the third reason was, quite honestly, it's selfish. I see people, further along in their career like I am, who maybe stop being creative. They've been creative, but they table off and they kind of lose some of their edge. I did not want to be that guy. And I wanted to understand, how can I keep myself creative? So this is subject matter I'm intensely interested in from a personal point of view. So I think this is an incredibly practical course. I want to teach this class because I think it's enormously beneficial to me, and I think potentially enormously beneficial to you no matter what your major is, whether it's business or engineering or filmmaking or whatever it is. Creative problem solving is a part of all of those things. Then I want to talk for a minute here about why it's particularly important to study creative problem solving now. Maybe more so than in your parents' generation or in your grandparents' generation. Creative problem solving is incredibly important right now. And the reason, I think, is explained very well by a guy named Dan Pink. We're going to be doing 2 readings from Dan Pink's writing this semester. I really love the way this guy thinks and writes. But Dan Pink talks about the 3 A's. And I think the 3 A's tell us why it's so important right now that we study creative problem solving. So Dan Pink says that it is particularly important in the 21st century that we concentrate on creative problem solving in America because of the 3 A's. The first A is automation. So everybody knows about these huge advances that are being made in artificial intelligence. This is similar to the Industrial Revolution, where machines began to put human beings out of work, so blue-collar workers, whereas maybe it used to take 1,000 people to make those shoes. Now it only takes 200 people to make those shoes because they're machines that do most of the work. And that, in the Industrial Revolution, put some people out of work. Well, now, artificial intelligence is going to put a lot of people out of work in more intellectual fields, in more white-collar kinds of jobs. And that's because machines can do what human beings used to do. A couple of examples. Years ago, I would have hired an accountant to do my taxes. They're fairly simple, but that accountant would know a whole lot more about it than I would. And I'd maybe pay him, I don't know, $1,500, $2,000 to do my taxes. Well, now you can go down to any Office Max and you can buy a little box, some software that's TurboTax, costs $99.99, less than $100, and you fill in the same kind of information you would have given your accountant, and it pops out your tax form. That's automation. It's automation of accountants out of a job. I mean, it's now white collar displacement. Same way with, to some extent, lawyers. Used to be even the simplest divorce. You'd have to hire a lawyer and you'd pay him, I don't know, $8,000, $10,000 for a fairly simple divorce. Now you can get software, and again, you put in all that information you would have told your lawyer, and for $149, you get a kind of settlement. And both of you agree to it, and you just take it to a lawyer and he rubber stamps it. So this is automation, and it's those two things have been around for a while. Man, it's getting more and more and more all the time. Engineers are being automated out of jobs. Architects are being automated out of jobs. I talked to a guy on an airplane a while back who is, he does film editing in Hollywood. Really cool job. But it's a fairly rudimentary job. It just takes sort of logical skills. And now there are machines that can do a lot of that film editing. And he said, I used to do 2 films a year. I'm a really good film editor, and it would take me 6 months to edit a film. Now I can do 3 films a month because I've got all this automated software that helps me do it faster and does a lot of the work for me. So one thing we got to think about is, what are those jobs that are going to get automated out? And they are the monkey see, monkey do jobs. They're jobs that require some intellectual capability, but actually not much creativity, not much thinking outside the box. You just follow the rules and you get the right answer. Those kinds of jobs are very vulnerable to automation. That's the first A. The second A is Asia. Asia has really stepped up their game. So America used to be the big center for higher education, and we were way, way, way more productive than the rest of the world. Asia has really stepped up higher education. Right now, there are 350,000 engineers produced every year by Indian universities. 350,000. We only produce about 60,000 in the United States. Now, and their universities have gotten better and better. And they produce pretty good yeoman engineers, the kind of engineers that do routine kind of engineering work. Those Indian universities are producing them by the thousands. Now, a good software engineer in the United States might make, I don't know, $8,000, $10,000 a month. A good yeoman software engineer right out of school in India makes about $1,000 a month. So where is that work going to go? Well, it's probably going to go where the labor is cheaper. And because Asia is producing well-educated yeoman engineers and other workers, a lot of that work is going to go to China, to India, to these countries that have been stepping up their game. So in America, will we be able to train those yeoman engineers and have them be successful for a long career, or will they be displaced by Asia? That's the second A. Automation, Asia. The third A is very interesting. It's actually abundance. As we get more and more affluent, as we have more time on our hands, as we are more comfortable, we demand more creative products. And that's true all over the world. So that there simply is, in the 21st century, more demand for new things. We want a new phone every couple of years that's got some new capability that the old one didn't have. We want a new video game that's cooler and has better graphics and is, wilder and crazier than the one we had before. All the way through every aspect of life, as we get more affluent, as we have abundance, we want more creative things. We want more stimulating, more interesting, more advanced kinds of things. And that just means we need more creative people out there to do those. Now, what Dan Pink says is that's what the American economy is good at. We can do creative things. But in the future, we need to be concentrating on creative problem solving. because automation is going to put a lot of those routine jobs out of reach. Asia is going to displace a lot of those routine jobs, and abundance is going to increase the demand for more creative things. So I think you should be interested in this class because in your generation, the 3 A's are going to imply a greater demand and a greater necessity for creative problem solving. So I think one reason why you should be interested in creative problem solving as a part of your university education is that it is fundamental to the American economy of the 21st century. Dan Pink talks about that in terms of the 3 A's. Richard Florida, who wrote the first reading we'll be doing in the class, he's an economist and he could not agree more. This is a fundamental thing for the American economy in the 21st century. So we as a university should be teaching people to address the needs of our economy in the 21st century. Every January I go to this economic forecasting group that looks at the economic forecast for Austin and for Texas. And every year it just blows me away, this year no exception, how much they're emphasizing innovation. What we have to offer in Texas, what we have to offer in Austin is innovation economy. Now it's like Tesla. A few years ago it was more the tech economy. But they're looking, the outside world is looking to us to produce people who can address these jobs that are about innovation and invention. That's the economy of the US, of Texas, of Austin in the 21st century. A second reason why I think this is super critical to your education is that creative problem solving is something that can be used in any aspect of your life. You can be creative as a parent. And if you think that, the way I'm going to be a parent is I'll do just what my parents did, that's probably not going to work for you. The world changes so quickly. You've got to be creative as a parent. You've got to be, right at the moment, how do I address my kids' education during a pandemic when they're not going to school? I've got to be creative about that. So it's a part of being a parent. It's a part of having a relationship. It's a part of almost every aspect of your life. You can either address it creatively or not. So I think it's an important lesson to learn for wanting to just live a fuller, richer, more productive life. And that's outside of your job. And then the third reason why I think this is super important is that it turns out that creative people generally are happier. They lead more satisfying lives. There's a wonderful quotation from Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers, and maybe because I'm an architect I particularly love this quotation, but Gladwell says, if I offered you a choice between being an architect for $75,000 a year and working in a toll booth every day for the rest of your life for $100,000 a year, which would you take? And he's arguing that you would take the job that gave a little more satisfaction, was a little less routine, was a little more challenging intellectually and creatively. So that I think if you acquire these traits of creative problem solving and you pursue a career that advances those kinds of things, it simply makes you more satisfied in the long run, and it makes you happier. There is a very famous psychologist named M.I.T. Csikszentmihalyi. We're going to be reading a reading from him this semester. He's in what's called positive psychology, not psychology to cure neuroses or depression, but psychology to make you happy. What is the psychology of happiness? And he wrote a whole book on creativity because that's a part of what he thinks makes people happier. And it is very much a part of creating a psychological state and just a level of satisfaction in our lives that make us happier. So think about these things. What is this course going to be about? Why am I taking this course? What do I want to get out of this course? And we're going to have a little more discussion about that in our check-in during class time. See you then.